Hi. Hi, how is everybody doing this Tuesday evening? Well, I'm saying evening because I'm in Belgium, but there's only a little chance that you are from Belgium as well. So whatever time it is with you, hello. Please say, let me know in the chat if the sound quality is okay. I'm particularly interested if you can hear my voice. Otherwise, I'm just yapping away here without any reason. Today I wanted to focus a little bit on the Benjelin. I acquired my Benjelin in a trade. It was payment actually for a job I did for an undisclosed manufacturer. There's already people in the chat. That's really nice. At random, hey, at random, good to see you back. At random says, hi, nice call, the announcement. Yeah, I figured it would be easier for people to join if I, announce it in advance. It's not something that always will work because I'm really, I don't plan things in advance. Usually, stuff like this I don't. But today I could, so why not? Jonas Lauer says hello from Germany. Hi Jonas. I'm going to Germany in about a month. Somewhere in the Eifel region, I think. There's like I didn't expect this to exist, but there's a vegan hotel, and I wanted to do something special because it's around my birthday, and I will be able to enjoy the breakfast and all the food that there is, because everything is vegan, which is good for me. Various Dispositions says hello, Various Dispositions, and at random tells me the voice sidechain sounds okay. Very good. Thanks for letting me know. How are you all doing this evening? So earlier today I made this patch because it had been a while since I actually used my Benjelin, and I wanted to freshen up my memory. Is that a correct phrasing in English? Freshening up my memory. I'm sure you know what I mean. And I was trying things out, so I made this, and this patch is completely run by the Benjelin. The VCO that we are hearing is from the Benjelin. Like the melody is also from the Benjelin. I was able to quantize it and then send it back in. So that's something I will show you how that works, because the Benjelin does not have fault proactive tracking, but it has a CV input with a modulation control, or CV amount, well, a potentiometer for controlling the CV amount. So you can fine-tune it manually to very good react to volt per octave. There's also an output from one of the VCOs that's being used as a clock for the shift register. This is sent to a Zularic repetitor here, which is triggering the drums. I'm also using the built-in filter here, which is actually a really good sounding filter if you ask me. Let me play around with the frequencies here so you can hear how nice and guttural that can sound. I think the filter in that thing sounds really ace. In a few minutes I want to change up the camera angle here. I'll pull out all the cables and we'll have a close-up of the Benjelin and data, so I can show you what all the outputs do. I won't take hours doing that. I want to go over it rather quickly. It's not that hard. It's not that hard of a module to understand, even though there's a thing about the looper that I don't really get. My version is a DIY version based on the Forest Gaver edition of Benjelin, and there's very little information about that. At least there's very little information that I can interpret, because there's a lot of schematics and I don't know shit about schematics. And the person who built this module made a really cryptic front panel for it, so I'm really not sure what one switch and one knob do. I know it's something to do with the looping, but since there's really a lot of iterations of the Benjelin, it's hard to compare this unit to the other ones. They all have a switch, at least one, but well, there's differences, and it's almost impossible because of the chaotic nature of this instrument to figure it out. Terry Haggis, hi Terry. Terry Haggis says, howdy, I was just looking for more videos on the Benjelin and stumbled into your feed. That's really cool. Welcome to the stream. I'm hoping OBS doesn't crash on me today. Last time I did a stream, it was playing nice, it didn't crash, so well, it's bound to happen today. I tested it out and it should not affect the stream. Well, at least it should not stop the stream, so if I notice it quickly enough, I should be able to just launch OBS again and get on with the live. So let me change up my camera angle here. Well, let me first remove all the cables. So Terry, you joined later, and for everyone else joining up later, hi Circular Tonic, what's up? Today I'm going to make a patch with the Benjelin, but I first want to show you a little bit what the outputs or what everything does on a Benjelin, so you get a better idea of what I will be doing next. And this patch actually is driven completely by the Benjelin. The voice is a Benjelin, the sequence is a Benjelin, and the clock is a Benjelin. Well, it's all the same Benjelin. But let's remove all of this and let's start from scratch. Later in the video I will, well, I have a broad idea. Of what I'm going to do. At random says Neil. I'm not sure who Neil is. Probably there's familiar faces in the chat that I just don't know about. Banalytic, hi Banalytic, he says, or she says, they say, hi, I joined too late. What version of Benjelin you use? I'm using Forest Gaver edition with a very cryptic front panel, so I'm a little bit unsure of the functionality of one of the knobs considering the looping, but most of the other things I pretty much understand. Well, they're just not that hard to understand, I think. So let me change up my camera angle. This will be a little bit jarring, so don't lose your balance now. Yeah, now the camera is pointing everywhere it shouldn't. So this should be an okay angle here. And let me try manually focusing this a little bit better. I think you can all see it like this. Let me know if you don't. But I created a little bit of an issue here for myself with my headphone cable. So let's change that around. Apologies. So there we are. Vanalytic says, thanks. It's my absolute favorite module. I used the one from Epoch Modular. Yeah, I was reading through the manual earlier today of that version to try and figure out, well, the one knob that I don't get. Circular Tonic, I have been waiting on some prototype modules for my next module. I swear it, but it's only one more day. So Circular Tonic, am I getting that right? That you are a maker, maybe? am I interpreting things wrong here? So let me know. Can you all see the data screen here? Well, I'm guessing you can. It's pretty clear in my on my screen here. Should be down. This one I don't get at all. Anyway. Hey, Nistada. Hi there. Nistada says, yeah, it's all right. Thanks for letting me know. I'm happy you can all see what's happening. I know it could be a little bit brighter, but I don't want to fire at my second studio light here unless it's really necessary. So anyway, if anyone wants to know about how a Benjelin works, I think it's best to know what a shift register is first. And I have thought about how to explain this. And I think the most easy way to look at it is if you compare it to a bucket brigade delay. A bucket brigade delay is called a bucket brigade delay. At random says, where do you usually start with it, the Benjelin? Well, usually just where it's at. I now like centered the knobs to do a little bit more effort, but usually I just go with where it's at and just start tweaking. So if you think of how a bucket brigade works, it's like, well, a row of people with a bucket. Well, there's one person with the bucket, usually the first one, and then he hands the bucket to the next one, and so on. And that way, that bucket travels from the front of the line to the back of the line. And that's a little bit how a shift register works. And it kind of depends on how many buckets the first person gets handed. This influences the pattern that we get along the line. Because maybe he gets one bucket and then they get passed to the end of the line without the first person getting a second one. Well, then your line is empty. But maybe he gets a second bucket immediately. Well, then there's two buckets traveling down the line. And this is a little bit how a shift register works, and I think it is really similar to how a bucket brigade delay works as well. So two of the variables that create the different patterns in the chain, one of them is the amount of buckets being handed to the first person, and this is determined in the synthesizer world by an oscillator. And then the second variable is the speed at which the buckets are being transferred. And this is called a clock, and this is also controlled by an oscillator. Let me check the chat here. Randy Woodard. Hi, Randy. Randy Woodard says, very interesting module. I have the one from Epoch Modular, and I love it. At random says the buckets will lose water and deteriorate. Well, at some point, depending on how you patch things up, well, and in the Benjelin this is the case, the buckets get recycled to, so when the bucket reaches the end of the line, it gets recycled to the first person, etc. But that's not necessarily the case with every shift register. You really have to patch it up or it has to be hardwired to do so. Circular Electronics says finds a link. The link is not going to work apparently. Module allows you to patch CV audio signals to Hive link. No, I'm not. Also, it can be used as an inside patch-based sending. And okay, so you're not talking about. Circular Tonic is talking about converter module to convert the modular cable stuff to like an how's it called, the cable that we used to use for internet. Is it an Ethernet cable? I think it is. And you can also use it as a patch bay between different parts of your case. Yeah, I think there's several manufacturers, at least there have been in the past, making something based on that idea. I think it's a really cool idea, and at some point I really thought about chaining cases with that. But yeah. Nistada says, I only know the Benjelin as a noise source for drones and noisy glitch sounds, but I haven't got it myself. And Banalytics says, it's too sad. Rob Hordijk, the founder of Benjelin, passed away much too early. Yeah, wasn't it just last year that Rob passed away? Yeah, so Nistada, I think it's something that most people think about when you mention a Benjelin, just it being a noise source. And even when you just use one oscillator out, that is, well, what most people associate it. Of course, I have to patch this through. Don't get scared now, this will be loud. But it's very low, so it doesn't sound that loud. Let's turn down the reverb and the delay. So once you start turning up the frequencies, you get all this crazy stuff happening. But well, I think it's really interesting to understand a little bit about how we get there, like in a noisy territory. Typical sounds of a shift register at audio rates, asks, and Nistada asks, and well, yes, that's typical for a shift register, or circuits that use shift registers. I want to show you different things though. So the first line here is representing one oscillator. The second line is representing the second oscillator. The first one is going to be used as the data for your shift register. So this determines the buckets that get the first bucket in the line. If you use the bucket brigade analogy, so it determines the first first bit of data. The second VCO is used as a clock source for passing that data along the shift register. And then there's a filter section. It also has an external input, and then there's like a looping section that I don't completely understand. But well, there's several outputs here as well. The first two are paired up no, they're not paired up. They're a pair of outputs of the first VCO. The third and the fourth are a pair of outputs of the second VCO. And then we get some interesting combinations. The W here stands for PWM. This is an output of a comparator comparing the two VCOs, and when one is higher than the other, this sends out a positive voltage, and when one is not higher than the other, it sends out a negative voltage, and thus we get square or pulse wave oscillations with variable pulse width, so therefore PWM. Then there's the X output. This caused me a little bit of trouble because I don't really understand it completely. It behaves kind of weird. It should be just an XOR output of the first bit in the shift register, but it gives me different voltages. Well, they are square waves or pulse waves, but they have different voltages, so that's a little bit of a mystery. And then there's the output, which is just the output from the filter here. The V output here, this one, gives us the Rungle signal, and the Rungle signal is when you look at the different parts of the shift register, the different steps of the shift register. I think there's 8 in the Benjelin. You can like give those values a weight like in binary, and then you can construct a voltage from that. So for example, if your data stream of 8 if your shift register has 8 steps and there's only 1 bit of data in the first one, you could look at this as 0000, 0001, and this is a binary number of, I think it's 1. But when that piece of data shifts forward to, for example, the second or third step in the shift register, you get a different binary number there, and the weight or the voltage that you can give to that is also different. So if you look at these values, you get a stepped voltage whenever the clock advances, and this is your Rungle signal. This will be important in a minute. And that's, of course, a little bit too loud. Apologies. Let's just look at that. Let me... No, that's this button here. So here we can see the square wave output of the first oscillator. The second oscillator also has this pulse wave output. You can see it's not going at the same rate. We can change the frequency using these knobs here. Maybe we can listen to this too. I should do this in stereo, because why not? This is going to be completely ridiculous, but I like to have something in the background so you can hear what I'm doing. So the signal coming from your right speaker or right headphone can is actually the VCO that is being used as a clock source for the shift register. And if you remember what I said just like a few minutes ago about the Rungle signal being stepped voltage that is created by the different values of the shift register, or the different binary values, you can imagine that This changes every clock pulse, so we should get like a binary, like a stepped signal that steps at the same speed as the clock. Maybe you can watch it here, and well, you can see on the red trace there, I know it's hard to see a little bit, but you should be able to determine that it's going at the same speed as the clock is going. So the blue line is the clock, the bottom one is the Rungle output. If I slow down my clock, you should see that the steps of the Rungle output get wider as well. The first oscillator is just providing the bits. It's kind of a way to have a random way of introduce bits to the start of the shift register. Now these knobs here, they control the CV modulation for the oscillators, and these are normaled to the Rungle output. So if I turn this up, our stepped signal that's going at the same rate as the clock will control the CV modulation. It will control the frequency of the first VCO. Of course, since this VCO is also used to insert the bits into the register, this will affect the behavior of that register and therefore the behavior of the Rungle output. The same thing goes for the second VCO here. When we turn up this knob, the Rungle output gets used to frequency modulate the second VCO, which is a clock for the shift register, thus giving us another kind of feedback. And this is why a Benjelin is a chaotic instrument. There's interesting feedback paths that sometimes can result in stable patterns. Most of the time it's like chaos searching for a balance. Now let's have a listen to the other outputs here. So like I said, the W output is an output of a comparator that compares the two VCOs. And I should patch this one here again. So this is the green trace is now the PWM output. You'll see that this just gives us, well, a PWM wave, which is a little bit chaotic. And then the X output, like I said, should be just a pulse train. But as you can see, at least I hope you can see, we are getting different voltages. So we're not really dealing with just a pulse train. There is something weird going on there. I read an article today about someone who was dissecting the schematics of the original Benjelin, and he mentioned that there is something weird to the XOR output, and he also mentioned that this affects the behavior of the shift register. So it was a lot of stuff that I don't understand, but at least well, and he mentioned that there's two levels for the XOR output, even though there should be only one. Now, when I listen to the first oscillator again, let's use the triangle output. It's tuned really low. So let's change that. If I reconnect the clock here, let's not listen to the clock, let's just monitor it. So the blue trace is the clock. I will slow it down. You can once again see that the rungle, these stepped voltages, follow the same the same step length. Well, it's a little bit hard to see. Now, if I reintroduce the modulation coming from the wrangler circuit to the first oscillator, it's not hard to imagine that when our clock signal is really slow, that we will get slow stepped voltages. Now all of this is at a steady pace because, well, the second oscillator is just being used as a clock and there's no weird feedback going on. But when we introduce some wrangler feedback, you will start hearing that the tempo starts being a little bit jittery. So there's absolutely more to a Benjelin than just making noise and like violent chaos. And this is similar to what I did at the start of the patch, just with a lot of reverb and delay. We can further decrease the speed of the clock. Well, now it's kind of stuck in a looping situation. But it can go really, really slow. Well, as you can hear, and we're still like at, what is this, like 10 o'clock. So you can create stepped voltages from the wrangler output that are really, really, really slow. And well, you can use the output of the clock oscillator as a clock for something else in your system. I really think that's a cool way to use the Benjelin. Nistada says, sweet. Yes, I agree. Should be awesome for generative music. Absolutely. That's something I want to explore further today. To make a generative patch based on the Benjelin at, well, kind of these settings. Now let's increase the clock a bit because I still want to try and address the looping circuit, even though I don't really completely understand it. We can still explore it a little bit. Let's increase the clock. This will increase the speed of the sequence. Nistada says, and great control over all the parameters. Yes, this is a really easy tool because there is indeed a lot of control. Like when I want to retune the VCO, it's just, well, the knob is just there. If I want the sequence to be a little less in range, I just turn down this. Or if I want it to go really extreme, So we have, I haven't mentioned the filter yet, I will later, but I just want first to mention this here. There's this knob for controlling the loop offset, and then there's this switch that I truly don't know what it does, because on the panel there's a 0 and a 1, but the knob or the switch has 3 settings, so I have no idea what any of that does. But what I am thinking is that in every setting but the bottom one we can introduce some looping behavior, and what happens when we start looping the register or the shift register, it just stops receiving new information from the first VCO. And I think this is a situation where we have a decent loop. Now there's versions of the Benjelin where this switch determines looping on or off, and then there's different iterations where this determines the length of the loop. So I'm not sure what this does, but it's clear that this is looping like 8 steps and not 127. Hi Helium. Helium says hi in the chat. How are you today? Today we are talking about the Benjelin. That was probably clear from the video description. But well, there you go. Let's see what happens when I switch this switch to the middle position. It's possible that this is a 127 step loop, but they are so long that it's hard to hear that it's a loop. Now this matters when you are starting to do things at audio rates, because well, every pattern length gives us different sounds. At Random says, I'm about to build a BENJOLIN, a Hungarian hybrid between Ian Fritz's Hipster and Rob Hordeg's Benjelin. This helped me understanding more. Well, I'm glad you like it, Ed, and that sounds like a really interesting module there. Aren't the triple slots also of Ian Fritz's design? I'm always interested in those because I very much like my Orbit 3, which is also a chaotic oscillator. And I always think I need 2 of those, but maybe something else would be more interesting. So now I looped everything at a quick, well, the speed is, the clock rate is quick, audio rates. And then when I turn this knob down, maybe the looping will stop, as you can hear. I think it gradually decreases or increases the chance of the shift register getting stuck in a loop situation. But like I said, I'm honestly not entirely sure. It's possible that the center position is really just the 127 step loop. Let's give this some reverb. I feel it should benefit from it. There's talk in the chat. Nistada says, so interesting. And triple slot is from Andrew from NLC. Did I get that wrong? It's Chaotica or something like that. That's from Ian Fritz, I think. I think I'm mixing those up. Helium says, tempted by this hype Jolin. Well, it sounds like an interesting module. Very much. Nistada says, it's sad Andrew has no Benjelin PCB design. And apparently the hype Jolin that at random was talking about is anti-copyright. That's interesting. Andrew made a version of Ian Fritz hipster. Okay. I'm really not that familiar with a lot of those modules that are in the DIY community because I can't solder for shit. So I always glance over them without going into them too much. But there's probably a ton of interesting modules that I'm missing out on. Anyway, let's listen to the output here, which is giving us the filter output. I think this is fed with the PWM output by default. Yes, that sounds about right. I think the R is the resonance for the filter, even though there's a line going through kind of depicting that this knob has something to do with the loop circuit. I don't think it does. But well, this filter is weird anyway, so it's hard to really know. I found that it's better to like hard patch your outputs to your filter input. This gives us a lot more volume. I think I read on in one of the manuals I read today that the filter outputs are line level. I don't get why that is, but well. So we heard the filter earlier. We can also introduce the Wrangler stepped voltage to the filter frequency with this knob. Helium says, what's fun is to drive Benjolin with a joystick. I used to have a Benjelin, I used to have a joystick by, what's it called, by IntelliGel. But I didn't really enjoy using it, and it was almost brand new when I bought it, so I resold it while it was still in pristine condition. I didn't really enjoy it. I bought it because, well, I thought it would be interesting to have a joystick instead of just always turning knobs, but I didn't really, like I said, I didn't really enjoy it. It was the second version of the joystick, so it had CV recording, but that again, I didn't use it as much. I see myself getting a lot more use out of like Griffin's Claws by Shakmat, for example. To me that works a lot more, I don't know, it gels more with how I approach my patches, I think. I'm not so much keen on controlling the modular with touch interfaces and well, even joysticks apparently. I really enjoy letting the thing do its own thing and stepping back and just watching the magic happen without me having to control everything. I like to turn knobs, filters every once in a while, but yeah. And don't get me wrong, I always like to play keyboards and having control over every parameter while I was playing, but the modular, it's just another beast entirely. And then suddenly it seems to die. Probably because the wrangler did something weird. So how is everyone enjoying the stream so far? I think I'm done explaining the Benjelin. Well, I don't really think I am done, but I'll stop explaining the Benjelin. And I just want to start making a patch with it. I think I'll use this as a base. What I want to do is show you how I can do something fault proactive with this. Mistada says, awesome, so cool to hear musical stuff from the Benjelin. Yeah, I think there's enough content around about the chaotic side or the noisy side of Benjelin. I think it has a really, really gentle side that I hardly ever see. Okay, so let me change up my camera angle here now that you've been a little bit accustomed to what the Benjelin is and how the controls work. I think you will be able to figure out what I'm doing. Ah, monotonist. The monotonist says, I happen to miss the whole explanation part, like one should do with a Benjelin. I don't know, man, but just listen. Yeah, yeah. Hey, monotonist, how are you doing? I'm so glad you could make this stream. Welcome to my place. Let's change up the camera angle here so I'm not just pointing at the wall. It's terribly dark in here. I should actually turn on some extra light. I'm a bit reluctant to... Don't ask me why. Can I turn up this studio light here? That should help a little bit. Yes, it just washes out my face, but I think you all know that I don't have a white left side of my face. So what I'm going to do here is just start patching. No, I will explain things. What I want to do is I want to use the rungle, the stepped output of the Benjelin, to control the pitch of our VCO that we are listening to. Well, I guess we are listening to 2 because we're monitoring the PWM wave. So well, that will be a challenge to get both the VCOs tracked together. Anyway, what I first want to do is send the Rungle stepped output to a quantizer. Now I don't want it to be full scale, so let's attenuate it with select 2 here. These data sets, thanks to Ed for mentioning the Hungarian guys from Triglav. Not familiar with them, but they have some interesting DIY stuff. I think I will have a look at that later myself. I can use a shorter cable than I should, because otherwise I'm going to run out of medium length ones. So on the quantizer here I just have a minor, well, a partial minor scale. But let's change that to just octaves to get the tracking right. Now I have to do the 2 of them, which will be a challenge. So what I'm doing is just fine-tuning the CV knob for the modulation input, so I get like perfect octaves when I'm sending in the stepped voltages. And then when I add like a fifth, you can hear that it sounds nice in tune, even though there's no actual full per octave tracking on the Benjelin. You can just tweak it manually to do so, which is an awesome thing that I discovered that I didn't expect it to do actually. We can bring in more notes. Then I can just freely adjust the attenuation of the Rungle output, giving us like a narrower patterns. They will stay in tune. I mean, this sounds really awesome. Maybe I should tune it down a little bit. No, I liked it more higher up. So, okay, this is proving to be really, really interesting. Let's bring down the filter a little bit, because it's a little bit harsh in my ears. I will bring it back up later. Now what I want to do is use the clock oscillator, but I think it's going too fast to actually use it. So maybe let's try things differently. I will use, well, I will just use the Rungle signal, like a clock source, and if it doesn't behave nicely, I will send it through a comparator to force it to give out decent gates. But I will just use it as is and see if I can like sequence or step through the steps. There's there. Let's see if I can make it advance through the steps on my mimetic digitalis. It appears to be working. That's good because it won't always trigger. Well, it will. The Rungle circuit will not always put out a signal that the mimetic digitalis recognizes as a clock. So it will already give us a slower pattern, which is exactly what I wanted from it. Now I want to add like a second VCO to all of this that kind of jumps at random to certain voltages that I will manually program in. Let's use cycle 5 here. Let's take the saw wave and let's send that through the synthesystem VCF. I can send it here. Let's so is this not? Am I doing things wrong here? The monotonist says it's sample and hold time. Well, it sounds like that, but well, I can make it loop. Ah, no, I need to do this as well. I think I'm starting to understand the looping circuit. Well, a little bit at least. Anyway, what I first need to do is remove the pitch control and tune cycle 5 to the same note as the bass note of the Benjelin. I think this might be it. PWM sound is it sounds kind of weird. It's hard to get its absolute pitch. Anyway, I'm just going to program in manual voltages anyway, so I can adjust the scale if necessary. Maybe, no, I thought it would be nice, play nice immediately, but it's not. Just resetting every step because the knobs are a little bit faulty, so I have to do it that way. add some like vibrato to the VCO here. Something like that. And let's just start programming in some notes. That sounds nice. Let's keep some at the bass note. So when you press down this encoder on the mimetic digitalis, you jump in halftone steps, which is easy when you use it as a pitch sequencer. These are our notes. Now when I engage the random stepping here, this is how it sounds. Maybe I can send this sound through a VCA as well. That will be more interesting in the long run. Otherwise, a patch like this gets awfully dense. And we can use, mimetic digitalis creates a trigger when it receives a trigger, so I can use that output to trigger mats here, which is convenient because it's right next to my VCA here. And I can also use this voltage to control my filter. Let's increase the attack a little bit. Let's look at the chat here. Listada says, for which manufacturer is your Benjelin? Well, it's a DIY module of the Forest Gaver edition of Benjelin. The person, well, I don't know if the person was called Forest Gaver, but it was really against any commercial site. He didn't want his module to be sold or resold, he just wanted to sell the schematics, maybe the PCBs, I'm not even sure about that. So it's really not of a manufacturer, it's just a DIY module that I got as payment for a job. And Istada also says nearly orchestral sounds. Yes, I can hear that. I think my release should be a little bit longer. Now I want to add another VCO. But I'm thinking how to go about it. I'm thinking to add a sub to this. What do you think? So hey, people watching, maybe you joined late in the stream. If you are, welcome to the live stream. We're doing a patch with Benjelin here. The first part of the stream was me showing a little bit more in detail how the Benjelin works and behaves, just so it's easier to understand what I'm doing now. Estada says subs comes handy. Sub comes handy, yes. Well, sub or some kind of bass. So I'm thinking I will use well, the Rungle output again. Maybe to step through the steps on step 8. Let's see if that behaves correctly. Yes, it does. Let's randomize the voltages a little bit with, well, by sending an output of orbit 3 into the signal input of step 8. Step 8 is not just a sequencer, it acts as an 8-step sample and hold module as well. So, well, the monotonist is completely right. Hey, Tom. How are you doing, man? Nice of you to join the chat here and the live stream. We're playing around with the Benjelin today. I hope you stick around a bit. At random says, I guess an original Benjelin only exists in MU format. I'm really not sure. 3Tom says, I just happened to see you were streaming. Yes, I've been trying out the streaming thing for a couple of days. I was inspired by Quincas Morera. That name probably rings a bell. He does daily, well, in weekdays at least, daily streams, making songs, usually a song a day or a song a week. And, well, I was watching a few of those streams live and it was really nice to interact with him. So I thought it would be nice to kind of be on the other side of that as well. Helium says, depending on settings, but with a little practice, it's quite easy to obtain string or brass instrument sounds. Well, in fact, I made, if you know Piano Book, Piano Book is a website, pianobook.co.uk, who gives away free sampled instruments, and I made a complete virtual orchestra with my modular, which was a lot of work, but it sounded really cool in the end. Like for the tubas and the trombones, I really did that raspy sound at the start. And I tracked every note independently, so it's really rich a sample library that you should be able to download there for free somewhere. Triton says preparing to go to Superboot. Yeah, I'm seeing more and more messages from all the makers and friendly Instagrammers preparing for Superboot. Once again, I will not be there. Maybe I can do a non-Superboot stream from home. Anyway, let's try to get on with the patch here. Let's first tune a VCO. I'm going to use 3-body here. It's getting confusing. 3-tom modular, and I'm using a 3-body. 3-tom says, are you coming to Belgian Modular Day? Well, I have no idea where or when that is. Maybe you can enlighten me. So maybe let's take a square wave for now. And let's monitor this. So I can just listen to... No, I'm doing something wrong here. Just going to listen to cycle 5 as a reference. 3-tom says the communication about Belgian Modular Day is a bit lagging behind as usual, but it is in Ghent on the 14th of June. Well, as I always say, maybe I will be there. At random asks, are you releasing a module at Superbooth, Tom? I'm guessing Tom will be a visitor carrying something interesting in his bag. I don't think Tom has like a place. But well, Tom can correct me there. Tom also says it would be nice to run into you again, Simon. It's been too long. Yeah, I totally agree. It's been really a whirlwind of depressiveness over the last few months. So, but it's been better lately. So I'm happy with that. No, I'm trying to work and talk here. It's not... Triton says, I will be there as a visitor, but you can sneak peek at what's in my bag. Yes. So what's happening here? I think we are at the same note, finally. And then we should be able to connect the output of the first step or the first stage of step 8 here to the quantizer. Let's set it to cycle here, and let's configure this to be a dual quantizer instead of just one with a second shifted output. Let's see if this works. I should increase the frequency of orbit 3 here. So something is not right here. change it to the saw wave on 3 body for the bass. I like that more. So how's that sounding for everyone? I have a feeling the bass is so low, we're barely hearing the upper harmonics. Well, maybe I should go for a triangle wave. And well, since 3-tom here is here anyway, I can just as well use one of his modules to spice up this bass. Let's send the output of my low pass filter into Doppio, which is always there waiting to be abused. Let's see if I can add some nice grit with it. Now that's a nice sub there. Now what happens when I use the saw wave? It certainly gives it a lot more oomph. Okay, let's see how this sounds with the Benjelin sound back in. I think I'll turn it down a bit. Tom says more caffeine. Yes. I think you cannot see what I'm doing here. Let's show you. So 3-tom. I'm not doing this for you. Well, I am a bit. So let's mute everything here. Now, I think Doppio really works well when you send it more complex sources. But, well, it does a nice job at like boosting this bass. Because when we listen to this bass by itself, it sounds really nice. But you can hear how much oomph there is, how much of those fundamentals that we can, or maybe it's not the fundamental anymore, maybe it's the harmonics. But you can hear that the low frequency is kind of weak. But when I send it through Doppio, it doesn't only get louder, because that's not the point. It gets more bassy, and that's because Doppio is saturating those saw waves and creating, well, it's in the most extreme setting, it kind of makes nice, almost square waves out of everything, but in a nice rounded way. That's what saturating and clipping is. So I'm driving this saw wave into a nice fat saturation. That sounds really nice, if you ask me. Modular asks, anybody else going to Super Booth? Nistada says yes, on Thursday I'm going. Rhythm says come say hi if you spot me. Well, say hi for me too, Nistada. We should add some modulation to all of this, especially to the frequencies of the bass here. Well, no, the filter, I mean. Modulate the filter for the first melodic counterpart we added, but I need to attenuate the voltage coming from 3-body a bit. How's that sounding, everyone? Istada asks, what's the other voice beside the Benjelin and 3-body? I think I've missed this part earlier. So this is the Benjelin, and this voice is cycle 5, which is here. This is the small oscillator of by your analog. It has a PWM output and also a variwave output, which maybe we should use actually. I can add some modulation to it coming from well, filter 8 here. You should hear it go from sine wave through triangle and saw wave to pulse and narrow pulse. Don't I have a longer cable? Of course I don't. Let's take a red one. Let's modulate filter 8 a bit as well. So the modulation for the variwave is a little bit more erratic. I think that's nice. Let's bring in the sub coming from 3-body through the SVVCF and Doppio. I think I want to add some noisy ambience to this with just a noise source and 2 filters. I have, I'm not sure if you can see it, yes you can, a noise source by Maleko Heavy Industries. I really like this, it's just 3 HP and it has digital noise, which I rarely use, and then a white pink noise and a very low frequency noise. Let's use the white noise because I want the high frequencies. Let's melt this into these 2 ripples filters here. One is a clone, one is an official Mutable Instruments one. And then if if I listen to the bandpass outputs and patch them up in stereo with a little bit less resonance, please. You should already hear that we are getting a little bit more information in the upper frequencies. And even when it's just static, and I really mean like not noise, but when it's not moving, when the white noise is not moving, even then to my ears it sounds already a little bit more interesting. Of course I want to make it move around. Let's try an output. Well, let's try outputs of filter 8 here. And I'm going to use two outputs that are 90 degrees out of phase. I like to use modulation sources, at least when you're doing things in stereo. I like to use modulation sources that are not 180 degrees out of phase, but just like 90 degrees, or well, at least not 180. So the modulation gets a little bit swampy, call it. Let's see what happens if I increase the resonance. Maybe I should automate this, and let me use Griffin's claws here. That should be interesting, because I can well, program the CV here. It should just work when I do this. And let's keep the loop going for a while, so it's really long and random. I think it can do like more than a minute long loops. Let's stop there. Let's now record the loop for the resonance of the second ripples here. Let's also make this a really long loop, because these loops in this setting of Griffin's claws are not quantized. They're just well, they're exactly the length that I make them, so they will shift relative to each other in time, which is exactly what I want. Let's keep it going for a while. And let's stop there. Now we have some frequency modulation and our filters that are modulating the noise, or filtering the noise, I should say. And we also have some modulation for the resonance that I programmed in manually here with Griffin's claws by Shakmat, by the way. Let's bring down the volume on these, add some reverb. So how's everyone enjoying the stream so far? I really like what I'm hearing right now. I think the resonance is a little bit too much here. Maybe I should bring down the frequencies. That should make it feel a little bit less overpowering. I can also bring down my equalizers here. It's a little bit cheating, but wait. Let's just go with that. Triton says, a very relaxing vibe. That's not, well, it's relaxing until I start cranking up the frequency of my clock, which is something that I wanted to demonstrate, because everything is driven by the Benjelin right now. It's controlling the tempo, and it's also controlling the sequencing of one of the voices. So when I change up that tempo, the problem is it's also going to change up the pitch of the VCO, but well, that's a risk that I'm willing to take. Let's just tweak the speed of the VCO that is used as a clock source for everything, really, to see what interesting things happen. Everything at audio rates. This is just madness. Let's slow it back down. Add some delay to the main Benjelin voice. Kind of forgot what my signal routing here was, so I was I'm just following my cables here and getting very confused at the same time. So where is this going to there, and that this one is just aha, so we're not gating our initial voice. That's interesting. That's really interesting. Let's play around with the scaling of the Wrangler signal, which is feeding the pitch of the oscillator in Benjelin. Ah, we're stuck in a weird setting of the Wrangler again. Let's try and get it out. Let's bring in some additional notes on the quantizer. I'm starting to wonder how long I have been going for. I'm guessing almost 2 hours. I think I will end the stream around the 2-hour mark. So if there's any questions or last minute suggestions for the patch, well, speak now or be silent forever. Introducing some Wrangler to the clock signal. This should make the tempo a little bit less regular. Modular says, "Gotta run, Simon. Keep up the good work. I will maybe see you in Ghent." Yeah, have fun in Berlin, Tom. I hope you have a blast. And maybe see you in Ghent. I will keep an eye on that date anyway. I'll look up a little bit of the information about the Belgian Modular Day. So any suggestions or questions, or just someone feeling the need to type some random words, I don't know, let me know what you think. In the meantime, I'm just going to add, well, just to try things out here. I'm just I'm curious about what will happen when I add a pinged sound from Collide 4. I will have to go to the... trying to get a cable that's not ridiculously long here. Yeah. This does. So that's the resonance on Collide 4. I think I want to time it differently. So the trigger is not at the same time as the trigger for everything else. Let's see if I can make that happen. Or maybe I can take the Rungle circuit, Rungle voltage, and use it to trigger like the looping on my envelope, and then I can use the end of cycle of that envelope to trigger or ping Collide 4. Let's just give it a go here. Cycle is here. Can I add some kind of frequency control to this? Well, I can. I'll have to program it in manually again. So let's, where's the next button here? Something like that. And I want to control the loop length. So maybe you're not really hearing what I'm doing here. That's entirely possible. So this pingy sound is a pinged Collide 4 by your analog, and I'm sending it a sequence from Mimetic Digitalis, which is just off screen there. It's a little bit of, well, out of tune, but I think it doesn't matter. I'm looping it with the voltage of the wrangler, so the stepped voltage going through a comparator, and I want to control the length of this loop that is pinging Collide 4 with some kind of voltage. So there were a few notes that are actually really out of tune. Maybe that's okay. And let's send in a voltage from filter 8 that's oscillating away there. I think that's kind of okay. Let's bring back in the first harmonic voice and the sub or bass. Let's try stopping it at the note that's out of tune. Let's just manually. Find the weird note there. So hey everyone watching, thanks again for joining the stream. I think I will be slowly ending the live stream. Maybe I can send the last thing to do, the output of Collide 4 into beats. That's something I found to be really cool. Not only to add reverb to it. Of course, that's ridiculously loud. Should do that again. But to add some grains to this, let's mute everything else. Maybe I shouldn't retune the grains, but this makes so Collide 4 can sound polyphonic, because we're adding these grains to it. When the grains are long enough, it sounds like full notes. Let's bring down the reverb on the console here. Maybe some delay. So let's bring back everything else. cut out the lows here. Yes. That's going to be it for this patch, I think. Nistada says thank you. And John BEDM says thank you with a live long and prosper sign. Stada says cool sounds in your patch. I agree, it sounds really nice. I had hoped to kind of end up with something like this, and I'm happy I was able to achieve that goal. Daisuke Ichikawa says thank you, nice patch. I'm going to let it play for like another minute or two or so, maybe, so I can cut as part of this live stream and use it as an Instagram teaser. Ed Random says really liking the streams. Thank you, Ed. I like you being here. Like it's the second time or maybe even the third time you're here. Really nice to see familiar faces. So I'm going to shut up for a minute here, so I have some clean audio. If there's anything you still want to say, now is the time. So once again, thank you all for being here and joining me on my journey of creating this really cool patch. I hope to see you next time in a stream. I think next time I will be doing something with Nibbler. Since we already covered the Benjelin, I might as well try building one with Nibbler. I think for anyone who watched this stream, it should be a lot easier to understand. But well, we'll see when that happens. Thank you all for being here. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the stream. See you next time.